A young millionaire, Ethan, was running late for an important meeting. As he hurried through the rain-soaked streets of Boston, he saw a beggar huddled under a flimsy awning, a baby clutched tightly in her arms. Without hesitation, Ethan handed her the keys to his house. "You and your baby can't stay out here in this weather," he said, his voice laced with concern. "Please go inside. My father is staying with me, so the house is empty." He didn't wait for a response, knowing time was of the essence. He rushed back to his car, the rain soaking through his expensive suit, and told his driver, "Please take her to my father's house. It's just down the road. And stop at the market on the way and buy them anything they need: food, clothes, diapers." Ethan's driver, accustomed to his employer's acts of kindness, nodded readily. He approached the woman, who was still shielding her daughter from the rain. "Come on, don't worry," he said reassuringly. "Mr. Ethan wants to help you and your daughter." The woman, whose name was Emma, looked at the driver with a mix of fear and mistrust. "I don't know you," she said, clutching her baby tighter. "I've seen on TV what can happen. I can't just trust like that." The driver, understanding her hesitation, opened his wallet and showed her photos of his own family. "Look, I'm also a father," he said. "I've been working with Mr. Ethan for years. He's a man who truly cares about others." Emma, seeing the genuine sincerity in the driver's eyes, finally agreed to go. She carefully climbed into the car, protecting her daughter from the rain, as the driver whisked them away to Ethan's father's house. Later that afternoon, after a long and productive meeting, Ethan returned to his car. "How did it go with Emma and the child?" he asked his driver. "Did they arrive safely at my father's house?" "Yes, Mr. Ethan," the driver replied, "but I left them at the beginning of the street. I thought it would be easier to maneuver the car." Ethan, slightly surprised, gently reprimanded him. "You should have left her at the front door, especially with this rain and with a small child." He paused, reflecting for a moment. "But it's okay. It was a busy day for all of us. I'll stop by tomorrow to see how they are doing and make sure they have everything they need." As Ethan drove home, his mind was preoccupied with Emma and her daughter. He had a deep sense of satisfaction knowing he had helped them, but a nagging worry persisted. Upon arriving home, Ethan was greeted by Mrs. Sarah, who looked after his father in his absence. "Mr. Ethan," she said, her voice hesitant, "your father, Mr. Ethan, took a copy of the house keys and went there as soon as you left. He said he wanted to spend a few days there. He was feeling bored and a bit better." Ethan was astonished. He went alone. "But he knows he shouldn't have," he said, worried about his father's health and safety. "Yes, he went alone," Mrs. Sarah replied. "He said he waited for you to travel because he knew you wouldn't let him go like that. He seemed determined and said he felt well enough to stay alone for a few days." Hearing about his father's sudden decision, Ethan immediately thought of the possible complications. Without hesitation, he asked his driver to take him to the house urgently. As the car sped through the rain-soaked streets, Ethan's worry grew. Arriving at the house, he saw the door open and an ambulance parked outside. His heart pounded as he saw his father being carried out on a stretcher. Ethan ran inside, overwhelmed with panic. "I am his son," he said, approaching the paramedics. "What happened?" The doctor, looking at Ethan calmly, explained, "Your father had a stroke. Fortunately, your wife was here and acted quickly, calling the ambulance. She saved his life." Ethan felt a whirlwind of emotions: relief that his father was alive, gratitude that Emma had been there, and a profound fear about what could have happened. He followed the stretcher to the ambulance, determined to be by his father's side during this critical moment. Still shaken, he watched as the doctor took his father into the ambulance. As soon as the vehicle headed for the hospital, he turned back to the house, looking for Emma and her daughter. He approached Emma, trying to control his nervousness after the scare with his father. "Emma," he began, his voice trembling slightly, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. The doctor thought you were my wife." Emma, realizing the seriousness of the situation, responded in a soft tone. "There's nothing to thank me for, Mr. Ethan. I did what anyone would do. I was in the right place at the right time." Ethan noticed the purchases she had made, observing that they were only basic items. "I see you've only bought the essentials," he commented, worried whether she had everything she needed. "You could have taken more, you know. You don't need to limit yourself." Emma looked at him, a mix of gratitude and hesitation in her eyes. "I didn't want to take advantage of your generosity," she said. "You've already done so much for us." There was a moment of silence during which Ethan felt a deep connection with Emma. "Emma," he said, expressing his genuine desire to understand and help, "I would really like to know more about you and your daughter. How did you come to be in this situation, if you're willing to share?" Emma, appearing to decide whether to open her heart, looked at her daughter, then at Ethan, and began to speak. "I never knew my mother," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "And I grew up with a father who was more like a stranger. He drank too much and barely noticed my presence." Ethan listened attentively, sensing the strength in her words. "I wanted to study, she continued, "but my father, he never allowed it. I read in secret after he was asleep, dreaming of a better future." Emma paused, recalling those moments. "Time passed, and life only got worse," she said. "My father got deeper into drinking, and I tried to help, but I couldn't. He was a harsh man who mostly scared me. Until one day I met someone," she continued, her voice catching. "He seemed perfect, kind. We were together for a while until I got pregnant. At that moment, I was very scared, but I thought I would finally have a family." Emma's voice was filled with pain as she continued. "But he abandoned me as soon as he found out about the pregnancy. He disappeared, and I never heard from him again. I managed to hide the pregnancy for a while. But when my father found out," she hesitated, "he was furious. He didn't let me explain. I was thrown out of the house with nothing." "How did you survive?" Ethan asked, his voice laden with concern. "I begged for money, lived on the streets," Emma replied. "And when my daughter was born, it was the homeless who helped me. I was scared, wary of everything and everyone, but I had to be strong for my daughter." Ethan looked at Emma, seeing not just the pain and fear in her expression, but also an incredible strength. "You are incredibly strong, Emma," he said. "Your story, it's one of immense struggle." Emma smiled sadly. "I had no choice," she said. "Life wasn't kind, but I couldn't give up for my daughter. I would face everything all over again. I don't know how to thank you for all this," she continued, her voice choked with emotion. "When I saw all your father's books, I felt like I was in heaven. I love to read, but I've never had the chance to access so many books." Ethan smiled gently. "You can read all you want, Emma," he said. "Consider them yours." As he prepared to leave, Ethan turned to Emma, extending an envelope. "Here's something to help with expenses," he said softly. Emma looked at the envelope, noticing the heft of the paper. She cautiously opened it, her eyes widening at the amount of money inside. "Ethan, this is too much," she stammered, her voice trembling. "I can't accept all of this." "Please accept it," Ethan insisted with an encouraging smile. "You need this more than I do. Buy clothes, food, everything you and your baby need." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you," she said. "You're giving me more than help. You're giving me hope." There was a moment of silence during which Emma observed Ethan, a thought emerging in her mind. "May I ask," she said, "are you married?" Ethan sighed, a shadow passing over his face. He began. "My wife, she died in an accident just a month after our wedding. That was 3 years ago." Emma covered her mouth with her hand, surprised and saddened by the revelation. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," she said. "I had no idea." He shook his head slightly. "It's okay," he said. "It was hard, but I've learned to live with it. The pain never completely goes away, but we learn to move on, don't we?" Emma nodded, feeling an unexpected connection with Ethan through their shared experiences of loss and struggle. Ethan stood up, picking up his keys. "Well, I need to go now," he said, "but please make yourself at home here. And if you need anything at all, give me a call." "Thank you, Emma," he said sincerely, "for everything." He nodded, a sad smile on his lips. "Take care, Emma, and remember, you're not alone." With those words, he left, leaving Emma sitting enveloped in a mix of gratitude, hope, and a newfound feeling of not being so isolated in the world anymore. Ethan returned to his home, his mind full of thoughts about his meeting with Emma and her story. The next day, he visited his father in the hospital. His father was in stable condition but still required constant care. Sitting beside the hospital bed, Ethan began to tell him about Emma and her daughter, detailing the day he fell ill and how she had called the doctor and saved Mr. Ethan. He also shared how difficult her life had been. Ethan's father listened attentively, his face showing signs of emotion. "You did a very good thing, son," he said with a weak but proud voice. "Emma seems like an incredible and courageous woman. It's good to see that you've grown up to be a man with a kind heart. I thank God for not abandoning me when I asked for the strength to raise you alone." There was a moment of comfortable silence between them, each lost in their thoughts. Then Ethan's father, looking thoughtful, spoke again. "Don't you think it would be better to bring Emma and the baby to live closer to us?" he asked. "They could stay at our house. I would like to have more life around, and you wouldn't need to travel so much to see them." Ethan considered the suggestion. The idea of bringing Emma and her daughter closer seemed welcoming, and the prospect of his father having more company at home was also appealing. "That's a good idea, Dad," he replied. "I'll talk to Emma about it. I think their presence would bring more joy to our home." Ethan's father smiled, excited by the possibility. "It would be wonderful to have a child around the house," he said. "It's always so quiet when you're working." With this new idea in mind, Ethan said goodbye to his father, promising to seriously consider the proposal and discuss it with Emma. He left the hospital feeling hopeful, thinking about the possibilities the future might bring for them all. After a long day of work on a major project, Ethan was exhausted but determined. He drove to the house where Emma was staying, thinking about the proposal he had in mind. Upon arrival, he found Emma tidying some things in the living room, with the baby, Grace, playing quietly on the floor. "Emma," he began, sitting down near her. "I have something important to discuss with you." Emma looked at him curiously. "What happened, Ethan?" she asked. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "My house, it's big," he said, "and since my father fell ill, it has been very quiet. He loves reading, and I thought, since you also like it, you could keep each other company. Moreover, he could help you with your studies if you want." Emma appeared surprised by the proposal. "You mean live in your house? Me and my daughter?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan affirmed. "It would be amazing to have you and your baby there. I think your presence could be good for my dad. He would feel less lonely, and you would have a safe place to stay, plus access to all the books you could ever want." Emma was silent for a moment, clearly pondering the offer. That would be amazing, Ethan," she said. I don't know how to thank you. It would be a great help for me and my daughter, and I would love to be able to study more." Ethan smiled, relieved and happy with her response. "Then it's decided," he said. "Let's do this. I believe it will be good for all of us." With a smile of gratitude, Emma accepted the offer and quickly began gathering her and her daughter's belongings. Once they finished, they returned to Ethan's house, her heart filled with hope for the chance to study and make something of herself. As they entered the house, Emma couldn't hide her surprise. "Wow, Ethan," she exclaimed, looking around in admiration. "Your house is incredible. You are truly a talented architect." Ethan smiled, appreciative. "Thank you, Emma," he said. "I hope you and your daughter feel comfortable here." In the days that followed, the relationship between Emma and Mr. Ethan, Ethan's father, grew increasingly close. He had a vast collection of books, and with great enthusiasm, he began to show Emma those he considered most interesting. "This one was one of my favorites when I was younger," Mr. Ethan said, picking up an old book. "I think you'll like it." Emma took the book, flipping through its yellowed pages. "It looks fascinating," she said. "Thank you for sharing this with me." Noticing the special connection forming between them and Emma's dedication, Ethan decided to let go of his father's caretaker responsibilities. Emma had insisted on taking care of Mr. Ethan when Ethan was not home. She looked after him with a mix of respect and affection, and Mr. Ethan greatly appreciated her and her daughter's company. "I really like taking care of your father, Ethan," Emma often emphasized. "He has been so kind to me and my daughter. It's the least I can do." Ethan thanked her with a nod. "You're already part of the family, Emma," he said. "My father and I are very grateful to have you and your daughter here." As Emma settled into Ethan's house, he made sure to offer her not just a home, but also financial independence. One day, while they were talking in the kitchen, Ethan brought up the subject. "Emma," he began, "I've been thinking. I'd like to pay you a salary. You've been incredible taking care of my father in the house, and I think it's important that you have your own income." Emma, surprised, looked at him. "Ethan, that's not necessary," she said. "You're already providing a home and everything my daughter and I need." "I know," Ethan insisted, "but it's important to me that you feel free and independent. I want you to be able to buy what you need for yourself and your daughter without having to ask." Emma looked at Ethan, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and melancholy. "You have no idea how much your words mean to me," she began, her voice trembling with the emotional weight of years of repression. For so long, my life was dictated by others, always someone telling me what I could or couldn't do, where I could go, how I should live, being treated anyhow, unable to make my own decisions. This freedom you're offering is something I hardly dare dream of anymore." Ethan listened attentively, his expression a mix of understanding and encouragement. He leaned forward, capturing Emma's gaze. "I see your strength, Emma," he said, "and I believe in you more than you do. At this moment, you're capable of much more than you imagine, and it's time for you to start exploring that. It's not just about buying things, but about you taking control of your life. Independence starts with small steps, and each decision you make is another brick in the path of your new journey." Emma sighed, absorbing Ethan's words. "I've always been afraid," she confessed. "Afraid of making mistakes, afraid of making choices, because I was conditioned to think I was not capable. Every decision I didn't make was a way to keep me trapped, dependent. But you're right. Maybe this is how I start to feel truly free." Ethan nodded, encouraging her to continue. "Exactly, Emma," he said. "And don't think you have to do everything alone. I'm here to support you, but the final decision will always be yours. Think of this as an opportunity to rediscover who you are, to explore what you truly like, what you want for your life and for your daughter." "I want that," Emma said, her voice filled with newfound determination. "I really do. I want my daughter to see me as an example of strength and independence, not dependency. I want her to grow up knowing she can make her own decisions without fear." "Ethan, thank you for believing in me," she said. Ethan smiled, pleased to see determination growing in Emma. "Then let's get started," he said. "How about we plan some initial goals together? Small things like opening your own bank account or simply choosing something you've always wanted to buy for yourself and your daughter. Let's make each choice a step towards your complete independence." From that moment, Emma began to receive a regular salary from Ethan. For the first time in years, she felt what it was like to have financial autonomy. She could buy clothes for her daughter, pick out new books to read, and even save money for the future without feeling dependent or needing to ask for permission. Over time, the relationship between Ethan and Emma became more intimate and affectionate. Ethan loved spending time with Grace, Emma's baby, and they often went out for walks together. During these moments, Ethan shared his passion for architecture with Emma, and she was genuinely interested, soaking up every word. Emma also dedicated herself to reading the books Ethan recommended, deepening the connection between them even further. The affection they shared began to evolve into something more profound. In her heart, Emma felt herself falling in love with Ethan, but she kept her feelings to herself, unsure of how to proceed. One day, Ethan found himself discussing his feelings with his father, sitting on the porch watching the sunset. "Dad," he confided, "I think I'm falling in love with Emma. It's the first time in years I felt this way, but I don't know what to do." Ethan's father, with an understanding smile, looked at him and said, "Son, life is too short for hesitations. If you feel this way about Emma, you should tell her. You deserve to be happy." Ethan pondered his father's words. "Do you really think so?" he asked. "What if she doesn't feel the same?" "You'll never know unless you try," his father encouraged. "And from what I see, the way she looks at you says a lot." Inspired by his father's advice, Ethan decided he would talk to Emma. He wanted to express his feelings and find out if the affection he felt was reciprocated. With a mix of nervousness and hope, he planned how he would approach the subject with Emma, wishing more than anything that she shared his feelings. That night, after putting Grace to bed, Emma sat in the living room reading when Ethan approached her. He sat down beside her, his heart pounding. The comfortable silence was broken by his soft yet hesitant voice. "Emma," he started, looking into her eyes, "can I talk to you about something important?" Emma set her book aside and turned toward him, an attentive expression on her face. "Of course, Ethan," she said. "What's going on?" Ethan took a deep breath, gathering courage. "I've been feeling something more for you lately," he said, "more than just friendship. You've brought new light into my life and this home. I care about you and Grace more than I imagined I would." Emma's heart raced, surprised and moved by his words. "Ethan," she responded, her voice quivering, I feel something for you too. You've been incredible to us." Ethan took her hand. "Emma," he said, "I want to be here for you, not just as a friend, but as someone who truly cares. I would love to be a part of Grace's life, to care for her as if she were my own daughter." Emma felt tears forming in her eyes, touched by Ethan's sincerity. "That means so much to me," she said. "Grace and I, we already see you as part of our family. From that night on, the relationship between Ethan and Emma flourished. Emma began attending social and professional events with Ethan. Reactions from people varied. There were malicious comments circulating, some referring to Emma disparagingly as the beggar Ethan had taken in. At various places, people looked at them with disdain, whispering among themselves. However, Ethan remained indifferent to these judgments, always by Emma's side, who felt increasingly confident and secure with him. At one of these events, an elegant cocktail party at an art gallery, Mrs. Emily, a well-known figure in Ethan's social circle, approached the couple with a polite smile. She greeted them. "Ethan, Emma," she said, "it's a pleasure to see you here. I've heard about your relationship, and I want to congratulate you." She maintained a cordial demeanor. Emma thanked her, a bit tense under Emily's scrutinizing gaze. There was something about the way Emily watched her that made Emma uncomfortable, but she maintained her composure. "It's always a pleasant surprise to see new faces at our events," Emily continued, still with her piercing gaze fixed on Emma. "Emma, you have a very unique air about you." "Thank you, Mrs. Emily," Emma replied politely. Before I forget," Emily said, looking at both of them, "I'd like to invite you both to a dinner at my house next week. It would be a pleasure to have you." Ethan hesitated for a moment, feeling a certain moral obligation to accept the invitation, though not particularly excited about the idea. He exchanged a quick look with Emma, seeking her silent opinion, before responding. "We would be pleased, Mrs. Emily," he said, offering a polite smile. "We accept the invitation." Emily seemed satisfied with the response. "Great," she said. "I'm looking forward to having you. It will be a delightful evening." With that, she moved away, leaving Ethan and Emma alone again. As soon as she left, Ethan looked at Emma. "Sorry," he commented, a bit concerned. "I thought we should accept. I hope that's okay with you." Emma nodded, supporting his decision. "It's okay, Ethan," she replied, trying to sound optimistic. "I think it will be an interesting experience." Together, they continued to enjoy the event, though the prospect of the dinner at Emily's house lingered in their minds, mixing feelings of curiosity and caution. The day of the dinner at Mrs. Emily's house arrived, and Ethan and Emma prepared for the occasion. Upon arrival, they were impressed by the beauty and grandeur of the house. It was evident that Emily was a renowned architect. Every detail of the decoration was carefully planned and executed with perfection. The aesthetics were impeccable, blending modern and classic art in a harmonious way. As they entered, Emily welcomed them warmly and invited them to sit down. Emma, while admiring the interior, couldn't help but notice a certain emptiness in the atmosphere. Despite the beauty, the house seemed to lack warmth and coziness. Emily lived alone in that huge mansion, and the space didn't convey the feeling of a happy home. "What a beautiful house, Mrs. Emily," Emma commented, trying not to show her perception of the place's atmosphere. "Thank you, Emma," Emily replied with a smile of pride. "I've put a lot of effort into every detail." Emily watched Emma attentively, an enigmatic look on her face. At one point, she began to talk about her personal life, revealing details of a difficult past. She mentioned how life had been unfair to her in her youth, leaving Ethan and Emma puzzled about the purpose of the conversation. Ethan, sensing there was something deeper behind Emily's words, asked her to be more explicit. "Mrs. Emily," he said, "sorry, but I'm a bit confused. Can you explain why you invited us to dinner tonight?" Emily sighed deeply, as if gathering courage, and stood up to get a photo album. Returning, she opened the album and showed a picture of herself from many years ago, visibly pregnant. Ethan and Emma looked at the photo, still not understanding the context. "Where is the child?" Ethan asked, trying to connect the dots. Emily, with tears in her eyes, looked directly at Emma. "The child? She's here. It's you, Emma." Ethan and Emma were shocked by the revelation. Emma looked at the photo and then at Emily, trying to process the magnitude of those words. "I'm your daughter," she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. The revelation that she was Emma's mother was a bombshell, leaving everyone at the table in a state of shock. Ethan, confused, expressed his disbelief. "This seems impossible," he said. "Lily and Emma never knew her mother. How can you be so sure that she is your daughter?" Emma, still trying to process the situation, looked alternately at Ethan and Emily, unable to formulate words. The idea that the woman sitting across from her could be her mother was something she had never imagined. Emily, with tears welling up in her eyes, began to tell her story. "When I was young," she said, "I met Emma's father. He seemed like a good man, despite his problems with drinking. We were together, and I became pregnant. But after Emma was born, he changed. He became aggressive, and on the day we left the hospital, he took her away. He disappeared without a trace. Everyone at the table listened in silence as Emily continued. I tried everything to find her, she said. I hired investigators, spent fortunes, but it was as if they had evaporated. There were no traces, no clues that could lead me to my daughter. Emma, absorbing every word, felt a mix of emotions. Anger at her mother's absence in her life fought against understanding the pain and desperation that Emily had gone through. So, the man who raised me, she asked, her voice quivering with the magnitude of that revelation, he stole me from you. Emily nodded, tears now freely flowing. Yes, Emma, she said, he took the greatest treasure of my life away from me, and I spent all these years looking for you, feeling the emptiness that only a mother can understand. Emma, still stunned by the revelation, looked directly at Emily and asked, how can you be so sure that I am your daughter? Why only now? Emily, with a look of relief mixed with pain, answered, when I first saw you at the event with Ethan, something stirred inside me, a premonition I couldn't ignore. You have a mark on your hand, exactly like mine. That was the last physical sign I remembered of you. After that day, Emily continued, her voice choked with emotion, I asked an investigator who I've worked with for years to find out everything about you. The pieces began to fit together. He finally found your father. He was drunk on a street, a shadow of the man I once knew. The investigator approached him, offering to buy more drinks, and that's when he managed to get your father to talk. That's how he confessed everything, telling the truth about how he took you from me, the fact that you never went to school, him not working officially to stay hidden. He hadn't even made your documents. He was completely out of his mind, living in hiding, trying to erase any trace that could lead back to me. Emma listened in silence, absorbing every word, every detail. It was as if a veil was being slowly lifted from her life, revealing hidden truths she never imagined were possible. He led a life of hiding, afraid of being found, she said, understanding the magnitude of what Emily was telling her. And he kept me in that shadow with him. Ethan, looking between Emma and Emily, expressed his amazement. It's an incredible story, he said. Hard to believe all of this. With a voice choked by emotion, Emma said, I never imagined something like this could be happening in my life. It's a lot to take in. Emily, with tear-filled eyes, agreed. I know, my dear, she said. It's a shock for all of us. She then added, despite everything he did, I arranged for your father to be taken to a care facility. There he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and will spend the rest of his life there. Ethan, trying to better understand the situation, asked, You did that? Even after everything he did to you, to Emma? Emily sighed deeply and responded, Yes, despite everything, he is a sick human being deserving of compassion. I spent years very angry at him, but today, seeing my daughter here in front of me, the happiness I feel is overwhelming. I can't think of anything bad from here on out. Emma looked at Emily, a feeling of gratitude mixed with the confusion in her heart. Thank you for that, Emily, she said. I'm still trying to understand everything, but I appreciate that you took care of him despite everything he did to me. He's still my father. After these revelations and emotional encounters, Emma's life changed radically. She began visiting Emily's house regularly, and the two made efforts to build the relationship they had lost. During one of her frequent visits to Emily's house, Emma felt the joy of a new beginning. In a moment of intimate conversation, Emily expressed her wishes for Emma's future. You've always been interested in studying more, haven't you, Emma? She asked, serving tea on the spacious house's porch. Emma, with a hopeful glint in her eyes, replied, Yes, I've always dreamed of studying architecture, but I never had the opportunity. Emily smiled warmly. Well, I think it's time to make that dream come true, she said. I want you to enroll in the best architecture school in the country. I will take care of everything. Emma was speechless for a moment, moved by the offer. Would you do that for me? She asked. I don't even know how to thank you. Tears of gratitude formed in her eyes. Emily reached across the table and held Emma's hand. After everything we've lost, she said, it's the least I can do. And there's more, Emily continued. I'm building a room for Grace here at the house. I will be there for every moment of her growth, something I unfortunately missed with you. Emma, now openly crying, felt a mix of happiness and relief. That means so much to me, Lily, she said. Grace will love having a grandmother like you. In one of the many warm encounters between Emma and Emily, the conversation took a deeply emotional turn. While Grace played in the garden, Emily confided in Emma. "My biggest dream after finding you would be to be called Mother by you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But I understand that all this is very recent, and I respect your time. I will do whatever I can to deserve that title." Emma, touched by Emily's words, responded sincerely. "You are already doing so much, Emily," she said. "I appreciate every gesture. I'm sure we will become even closer." As time passed, their relationship naturally and organically strengthened. Emma made regular visits to Emily's house, where Grace loved spending time. The little girl, completely comfortable in Emily's presence, filled the house with her laughter and joy, creating a family atmosphere that had long been absent in the lives of Emily and Emma. Several years passed, and with Emma's architecture studies nearing completion, the big day of graduation finally arrived. Having faced many challenges and overcome numerous adversities, she was about to celebrate a significant milestone in her life. The graduation ceremony was packed with teachers, family members, and friends, all gathered to witness Emma's success. As she walked down the aisle toward the stage, Emma felt a mix of pride and gratitude. Her eyes scanned the audience, looking for three special people: her husband, who had always supported her unconditionally; her father-in-law, who had become a constant father figure in her life; and, of course, Emily, her biggest supporter in architecture. Stepping onto the stage, Emma looked out at the audience and began her speech. "Today, I'm here not just because of my own efforts," she said, her voice full of emotion, "but also thanks to the invaluable support of some very special people. My husband, who has always stood by my side, encouraging me to reach my goals; my father-in-law, who welcomed me as a daughter and gave me strength in difficult times," she continued, her eyes finding Emily. She paused for a moment before saying, "and, of course, my dear mother, Emily. Mom, you gave me more than a chance to study. You gave me a home, love, and the family I always wished for." Emma's words deeply touched everyone present, but especially Emily, who could not contain her tears. She covered her face with her hands, moved by hearing the word "mom" from Emma. When Emma finished her speech, Emily was visibly moved, tears streaming down her face. Emma's words, calling her mother, touched her heart in a way she had never experienced. She felt a wave of love, gratitude, and a profound sense of fulfillment. The years of searching, the pain of separation, and the uncertainty had finally given way to a moment of pure joy and connection. After the ceremony ended, Emily approached Emma, away from the hustle and bustle of the graduation ceremony. Tears shimmered in Emily's eyes as she began to speak, her voice choked with emotion. "My dear daughter," she said, "for so many years, my heart was incomplete. A vital part of me was lost. I always knew deep inside that this day would come, the day I could finally see you grow, see the incredible woman you have become." Emma, still absorbing the intensity of the moment, listened attentively, clutching her mother's hands between her own. "When you were taken from me," Emily continued, "a somber silence took over my life. I fought every day, not just to find you, but to keep the flame of hope alive. And today, here, seeing you as a graduate, so strong and radiant, that hope has turned into reality." There was a gentleness in Emily's voice as she spoke about the years of separation. "All these years, I imagined what it would be like to hug you again, to touch your face, to laugh and cry with you," she said. "I missed so many moments, so many milestones that a mother should share with her daughter. But now, looking at you, I see that every tear and every prayer was worth it. You are my miracle, Emma." Emma, moved by the depth of her mother's words, whispered, "Mom, I missed you every day, even without knowing who you were." There was an emptiness, a space that nothing could fill until today. Emily nodded, her own emotions mirrored in her daughter's eyes. "I know, my daughter," she said, "and no matter the years we lost, we will create new memories together. Life has given us a second chance, and I will be here for every step you take." The two embraced tightly, a hug that sealed years of distance and solidified their relationship. "You completed me,"